Oi, this is the Profanity Gnome, and I'm here to tell you that if you're under 13 years old, fuck off this video! Get the fuck off YouTube! Get your mama to get your dad's cock out of her ears and actually be a parent! This is for adults only! And for everybody else, enjoy the video. Land ho! Land ho! She-Ra fandom inbound! It's crazy how the She-Ra fandom's actually returning. Yeah, it really is a surprise to see people coming back. Although it's not as big as I remember it. Well, size isn't everything. Yeah, says the 3 foot. You're not that much taller than me. I am sitting at a heightly 4'11". Cool it, Shorty Squad, we're getting ready to dock. Short people are the majority of the population, we will reign supreme! Right. This is Horde Prime. The episode begins in Eternia, where Lord Horde Prime has wasted no effort in his invasion tactics, wanting to crush anything that stands in his way right from the get-go. But thankfully Adora and the other princesses are here to help. They are doing everything they can in order to keep the residents of Eternia safe. But unfortunately for them, they're still down one very crucial princess. Since the sword broke, Adora has yet to be able to access her powers anymore. But I'm sure they'll find a way around that. I've said it in the first episode, I'll say it again. It's not the sword that had the power. It's the runestone inside. So technically, she should still have access to all of her powers. Well, you're half right. Technically, yes, the runestone should have all the power. But Adora doesn't know how to naturally tap into it. I think she's always used the sword as sort of a conduit. But that's stepping dangerously close into headcanon territory, so we're not going to take that as concrete facts. Now, fun fact, I do actually watch other people's reviews of certain series and episodes before I actually make my own reviews to give my own thoughts, just to get some different perspectives. It's how I known that the opening each and every episode this season changes just a little bit depending on the episode. Who knew? Fun facts aside, we later cut to an obvious dream sequence with Adora, as she's having some sort of weird vision about a girl that could be the power of She-Ra itself, though we don't know for certain because she wakes up before we realize what's up. We then see that she's in a weird containment camp, where everybody is just struggling to hide and survive. She goes over to Bo, who explains what their next plan is. They're unfortunately going to get Tumblr back. But hey, they got entrapped her, so it's not all bad, as she exclaims the dangers of going out into space, and the fact that they don't know where their friend is being held to begin with. So, yeah, this is a plan, I suppose. But then they cut into the war room, as there's obvious fighting going on between Shadow Weaver and the King. Because, of course, Shadow Weaver is throwing out everything possible to want to activate the heart of Etheria. Oh, come on, we're going back to that? God, even the princesses are done with this shit. And Perfuma brings up a good point. Is Shadow Weaver still their prisoner, or what? Can we get a sip rep on that? Kudos to her. Well, then we heard that everywhere is being attacked all at once by Horde Prime, and Adora is ready and willing to fight the fight. But the king decides, no, you're better suited to stay on the sidelines from this moment, because we still need you to go on the main purpose of the story. Go after Tumblr. Speaking of complete utter failures... don't you think that's a little harsh? No. She is right where she belongs. In prison. Alongside the only other person who can relate to her particular situation. Catra. Well, both of them did almost destroy all of Etheria for the sake of power and proving Adora wrong. Gent, I know you're trying to be a gent, but let's be real here. She is just a copy of Catra. She is
just devolved into a copy of Catra. In fact, the only difference between the two of them is that one of them knows what they're doing is wrong, and the other one is Tumblr.
We later cut to clear runner for Best Princess of the series, Scorpia, who is currently doing the one thing I never thought possible. Actually connecting and making Swiftwind look like a likable character. Seriously, their personalities just seem to click. They even set up a small little thing about her liking to sing. I hope we get a Disney princess thing going on here.
I hope not, because they're currently in the middle of a frickin' war. As Bo here shows that they're being approached by a few clones of Hordak. They decide it's best just to hide in order to see what they're going to do. But Adora decides to charge headfirst, trying to overcompensate for the fact that she got no powers no more.
We cut back to Catra immediately, as Horde Prime is doing something there. Not sure what. Kind of rude for ignoring Catra. Oh, okay, he's back to normal. So he explains to Catra that with his armies, his power, and his influence, what use is she to him? She explains that she's the only one who knows the heart of Etheria, and if she does anything to her, he loses it. But good old Dreadlocks here is more in control than what she and the rest of us realize. Or at the very least, he gives off that charismatic impression. It's kind of eerie. Well, I gotta admit, for all this show's flaws, the one main consistent that constantly occurs is that they make really, really good villains.
With the amount of charisma this guy has, he could probably win a high-stakes poker game with Uno cards and a salamander.
We then once again cut back to Adora. These jump cuts are starting to get annoying, as she's continuing to have her weird dreams about the Avatar state. And then she's forcibly woken up before she realizes what they mean again, as Scorpia apparently knocked her out with her stinger because charging the enemy head first is just stupid, and she is stupid for thinking that could ever work. Even someone like Sokka here, yeah, I know his Bo, but let's be honest, he's the Sokka of the crew, knows that if you charge in head first with no strategy or ways to beat her opponent, it's a bad move. She comes up with a bullshit reason that she wanted to take one of the clones alive to ask it questions, but judging by her behavior earlier, that's not the case. But it is a good plan, so they decide to go with it. So they head to a nearby town where the clones have taken over, and Adora is doing her best I can beat your ass with a spoon face, and that's what they proceed to do. Kick this lone Hordak clone's ass. And then, now they have their informant.
What's up, Rhino? Something feels off about this episode.
What? What's wrong? I know we've been chastising it for a few nitpicks here and there, but otherwise it's a pretty solid episode.
I know, that's the point. There isn't some big flaw so far. In fact, a lot of focus has been pushed on the story. For the first time in a while, it feels like there's genuinely real stakes, real consequences, real trials for, well, most of them.
Huh, you're right. That is kind of weird. Hey, do you think the writers have finally learned their lessons and are actually listening to their critics?
I highly doubt that.
So we later cut back to Tumblr again, who is currently doing her best impression of someone who isn't totally in over her head, as Catra approaches her, as literally the only person on the ship other than her that isn't a clone of her old boss. She decides to confide in Tumblr, because she needs someone to talk to. But all Tumblr does is intentionally piss her off, saying that she's just as much of a prisoner as she is. And this next scene doesn't do that very good of job of proving Tumblr wrong here, as two Hordaks invite both of them to a dinner party. And yeah, I think Catra is starting to somewhat realize the position she's in, even if she's still in heavy denial about it.
Meow. Yeah, looks like it's going in that direction. Catra will be redeemed this season.
Yeah, we've always known that. It was never a matter of if. It was always gonna be a win.
So, who wants to place bets? Which episode it's going to be? Well, that clone of Hordak wakes up, only to discover that he is in a caught position as Adora begins to interrogate him. And he is quite the little chatterbox, as it's clear that this poor little clone has been brainwashed to think that Lord Hordak Prime is a god. And with his charisma stat, I don't think he could be anything but. And he won't shut up about him and his glory, to the point where even Scorpia has had enough of his suck-up shit. But then he reveals that, even now, Hordak Prime is one step ahead, as they get a distress call from their campsite. As it turns out, Horde Prime has laid an ambush, attacking them at their most vulnerable state. The princesses are doing everything in their power, well, most of them are doing everything in their power, to hold them off. And, of course, Adora comes in, guns a-blazing to try to help out.
But then we go to the dinner party scene, where the tension could be cut with a knife, as Hordak begins to brag about the food they're eating. A dish so rare that he intentionally destroyed the planet so he could be the only one to devour it. Glimmer sees the type of position she's truly in, especially when Hordak begins to put a live feed on the attack on their home base. And then he begins to brag about how military strategic his plan is, even going as far as to show their camp's leader, the rallying crier, Adora, which is still Catra's trigger after all this time, as he decides he's going to pull the trigger on her, as she is caught between a rock and a hard place. But then Glimmer decides to spill the beans, saying that the heart of Etheria cannot work without Adora. If Adora dies, he loses the power. And Catra only looks in a flick of horror, as they all realize that their biggest bargaining chip has just been used up.
Cold, strategic, merciless. This is the type of quality villains I can expect from She-Ra.
We cut back to Adora and Bo real quick, as Adora is finally willing to confess that she's been over-exacerbating and overcompensating for her lack of power, and Bo goes, "Bitch, you're Adora. You're She-Ra. You always will have the power. And look, you have the power by rallying people to your side. Don't try to be the Sokka. I'm the Sokka of the group." With this pep talk, Adora gets back on her feet and back in the game, and thus leads the charge to retreat to get out of that sticky situation while destroying all the robots. But even after all the robots get destroyed, more inevitably come. Adora gets a brief glimpse and remembering a certain spot where the robots may or may not actually find them again. And so, the race is on to get to that spot.
Wait, if she knew about this spot from the beginning,
Don't question it. Just let it go for a second. Well, we cut back to Glimmer, who's being taken back to her cell, as Catra still tries to act like she has the upper hand, but Hordak Prime puts her back in her place and says, "No, bitch, you never had the upper hand. Have you seen me? Have you seen your position? Do you know what this is? I am the big daddy around here. You're just a stray kitty I picked up. But don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. Yet. I still have a use for you. Everything is part of Big Daddy Prime Dreadlock Man's design." Yeah, Catra is very much in the right to have that worried look. Well, the episode ends with all of Adora's friends going into the middle of the woods in full retreat, as Adora finally stumbles across that magic grotto place that her and that one old lady, what was her name? I don't know. It's that purple lady that hasn't appeared often enough.
Razzle Dazzle. Yeah, you're thinking of Razzle Dazzle.
Right. Roz. So yeah, they go to that magical place, and they found a place where they finally can be shielded from Horde Prime. How? Magic. No other explanation, just magic. But that's enough of a reason for me. And then Adora seems to have a full-on mental breakdown, as a bunch of images flash in her mind, going full Avatar state of unconsciousness and worn out. And that's where the episode ends. For a show that supposedly has so much progressiveness to it, this episode ended with a pretty big set of balls, if you ask me. And that was Horde Prime. This is not the type of quality I expected from a She-Ra episode. It's actually surprisingly good.
Actual stakes, personal conflicts, a feeling of hopelessness.
Outnumbered, outgunned, and even though the princesses are powerhouses, this is too much even for them.
And one overlord who has all the power and is holding all the cards. He knows he could destroy the planet at any time. They're all just on borrowed time.
This was a good introduction to what kind of character we're dealing with and what kind of menace we're facing with Horde Prime. I'm actually excited to see what the rest of Season 5 has to offer. It's no wonder the fandom of She-Ra came back after this. If the rest of the episodes this season are this good,
then maybe it won't be a waste of time.
Yeah, and since this is the final season, we should do something special.
What do you have in mind?
Well, I asked the writer to do us a favor, and he seems to like the challenge.
Challenge? What are you talking about?
You'll find out next time. We're the Cartoon Gentlemen, the organizers of Chaos's Vintage Kings. Hey, wait a minute, and we'll see you next time. Don't you dare jump the...